Hello, good evening. This is Bill Kennick, Uranian astrologer. Come back to December 30th of the year 2024, and there's a new moon in about a half an hour when I'm doing this recording. So I forwarded my what do they call that software? Astrolog software, which I've been experimenting with. I'm very happy with it so far, and I forwarded it to the time of the new moon. And as it happens, which is slightly after sundown here in Alliance, Ohio, about a half an hour from now, this is like 5 minutes to 5 in real time, but the chart is for half an hour from now, 5:27. Now, one thing I noticed right away is Kronos is on the ascendant. That has a lot to do with me because Kronos is conjunct. Yeah. Starting to look like Rudy Giuliani with all those teeth, huh? Well, he's famous. He was mayor. They made him mayor. So Kronos, meaning leadership, and on my son, that means they should make me president. But maybe I should leave my phone on a little bit more, because so far I haven't gotten any letters saying, "Dear Mr. Kennick." Well, they do. I get letters saying, "Dear Mr. Kennick, I represent so-and-so, and you owe them money. Kindly remit." But I don't, unlike Lucius Quintius Cincinnatus, they haven't come to me working in the fields and say, "Hey, we'd like you to take over, be ruler of Rome for a while." And he said, "Well, wait till I finish, But anyway, there it is, Kronos on the ascendant. Neptune on the midheaven. Combined with node. So Neptune on the midheaven means everybody's deceived. In other words, the whole world they're nuts. They've got it wrong, whatever they think they're doing. Now that Neptune is making a nice midpoint to Pluto Uranus, and also all sextiles. But Neptune and node, that's that involves the people, the dreams of the people come to a sudden crash. Pluto, or change radically, but it's also making a mundane square to Kronos. So the government is either going to bring everything to a sudden crash, or the government is as deceived as everybody else. Which I tend to think is probably more like it. We have a democracy, so-called. And but the idea is there is some accountability to the people, and the people have some input into policy. Maybe not the everyday, workaday details. But so when Neptune on the midheaven, that means, in a mundane square. By mundane square, I mean that if you take the houses as the aspects, then something's on the midheaven and something's on the ascendant. Even though it's not exactly, it's actually more like 105 degrees, but it's a mundane square. by houses, it's a square. Now you take, let's say, the midheaven to Jupiter, and Jupiter's on the 12th house. So that would be a mundane sextile. Because it's two houses. And what's this? How do you interpret that? Well, mundane means it's real. It's in the real world stuff. So Neptune on the midheaven with the node. So we're having illusions of plenty of people, plenty of connections. Make a mundane square, three houses apart, to Kronos. And I might add Hades is there too. So these are the dreams of the government. The things they aspire to. Now, this is for the whole world. But the difference is I'm making this chart for Alliance, Ohio. So in New York, it's way past sundown in New York already. An hour almost. And so the midheaven will be different and so on. So if you made the horoscope for Washington, D.C., or Russia, Moscow, or wherever these events are supposed to be taking place, it's going to be, the houses are going to be different. So I guess this is more of an astrology lesson than for you other astrologers. And I'm teaching something that, well, I've been fooling with it for 50 years. I did teach it, 50 years ago, before I knew anything. But I could read the textbook, and you got some people started up there in Lake County, Ohio, and South Euclid, Ohio. We got some good astrologers started there, and there were some good astrologers that straightened me out on a couple of points, and life goes on. But anyway, it is a new moon. There's the chart. Interesting here point now. The asteroid Athena is conjunct this new moon, and this will be true everywhere. Now, what is Athena? She's the daughter of Zeus. And Athena is kind of a warrior. She's a weaver and a warrior. So those of you that are doing sewing and knitting and stuff, this is a good. This will be a good 2 weeks for those kind of things. Athena. Yeah, I think the goddess of weaving. Also the goddess of Athens, but also, kind of a warlike individual. She doesn't mind waging war. The thing about Athena is she prepares. So if she's willing to wage war, she's preparing to do so. Now, this new moon, conjunct Athena, that means, well, Athena will be greatly emphasized. Now, what are the aspects? This new moon is in 9. I think Athena is in 10 or 11 of Capricorn. And the sun, every New Year's, the sun is in about 10 of Capricorn. Because 0 of Capricorn's on the first day of winter, right? Then, about 10 days later, we have New Year's. So the sun usually starts out in 10 of Capricorn. And actually, New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, that has no particular astrological significance. Now, somebody's going to say, oh, yeah, but it does because blah, blah, blah. But it's not like the solstice, which was December 21st. The only reason we're doing this is because there's a new moon right now. And it's not exactly New Year's. Tomorrow's New Year's Eve, and the next day is New Year's. But I don't see anybody really making a chart for New Year's. Oh, they must. Everybody. Because it's a great ceremonial time. So I imagine there are people making. But anyway, it's always at about 10 of Capricorn. But the question is, not every New Year's has a full moon. Or in this case, a new moon, rather. And certainly not everyone is conjunct Athena, because Athena and the sun, Athena has its own orbit as an asteroid. It goes around the sun, every 11 years, pretty much, more or less. So it's slower than Jupiter, and it's faster than Mars, way faster than Mars. So those are the asteroids, in the asteroid belt. But Athena is one of the 4 big ones. So we, how do we find the meanings of a planet? And there's 2 main ways. I will tell you what I'm trying to find out, the meanings of the asteroid number 1000, Piazzia. And I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But usually you take the mythological meaning. You say, men name the planets, right? So how do you know they get it right? Now, I read somewhere, and this is a largely unprovable mystical construct, where they say, no, the planets name themselves. Well, that would be convenient. But I don't see, how do the planets name themselves? But then if they don't name themselves, you're left with the possibility that the dummy that discovered them, he has naming rights. And he's going to, just because of the time it was discovered and his horoscope and whatnot, he's going to give it the right name. And then the other, so they have, the naming rights. Then they say sometimes they use the physical characteristics of the planet itself in order to further confirm what its rulership would be. Like take Mars. Mars is supposed to be the red planet, see? And as I would say, as it glows in the sky, it is red. It's not purple, or, it's red. You come down to Mars is, you take a picture of it through a telescope, it's reddish, but it's not green. See, Venus is supposed to be green. Oh, no way. But Venus is named after the goddess Venus, the god of love and beauty And, you know, so astrologers, I guess they have mathematical frameworks. They have systems where they set up to define the characteristics of planets. Now I'm looking, I don't even have it in here, but it is in about 3 of Sagittarius right now. The planet Piazzia, named after Piazzi. So it says, well, what are we going to find out? So I've been reading up on Piazzi. He was an astronomer. Now, actually, I found the best biography of him in the Catholic Encyclopedia, which is one of these things you find on I found on the internet. And Piazzi was a monk. So that's where the Catholics laid claim to him. Well, he founded the Palermo Observatory. And then he was in charge of another observatory as well. I think they were both in Sicily. And he went to England to get some instrumentation. So, you know, he was quite involved in getting the equipment to, you know, they finally made a star catalog of, you know, 6,000 or 7,000 stars. Now, you know, everybody already knew the names of the stars, but one of the things Piazzi did was get some accurate instrumentation, so that when he said, you know, the star is here, it was there. You know, it was very close. So anyway, one day he discovers something that's not supposed to be there. So he said, "Oh well, that's a planet." But he didn't want to, like. I mean, discovering a planet is like unheard of. When was that? Well, Herschel had discovered Uranus by that time. But I mean, discovering a planet, you know, that's people are going to laugh at you big time. So he said, "Oh, I discovered a comet." But to his friends, he said, "Yeah, this might be a planet. It might be a planet." Well, then it disappeared behind the sun. And there was another guy that did the math. Some famous man, this Asteroid 1001, and the guy that saw it reappear as Asteroid 1002. So those 3 guys, asteroid number 1000, 1001, he found, calculated, lost, and refound the asteroid Ceres, Ceres. And so as the discoverer of the first asteroid, and by the way, this is, holy shit, this falls right within where Bode's Law, which they say is not really a law, and then some people are nicer about it. They say it's an empirical law, meaning that it's not a law, but it's something. They said, well, Bode and his another guy looked at the spacing of the planets, and they always said there should be a planet right there. You know, in other words, and this is where Ceres was. This is, holy shit, you know, this is right where this unknown planet is supposed to be. Or, you know, and then you kind of get the story. It's like you know, the planet Krypton, the planet in Superman stories. The planet Krypton blew apart, and it consisted of you know, thousands of fragments, all of which were rather small, but in the aggregate it would be, you know, a big planet. So you have the asteroids occupying this place. Now the current theory is that you start from small pieces and eventually the planet aggregates. So you don't really have a planet that blew apart. That, according to the current theory, it's aggregating. It's eventually it will form a big planet and clear its orbit. And then we call it an actual planet. But in the meantime, there are planetoids, which is more accurate than asteroids. Anyway, Piazzoli. Piazzoli. No, not Piazzoli. That's Tango. Piazzi. Piazza. Piazzia. Piazza. Piazzi. He's the monk. He discovered Ceres, asteroid number 1. And so, years later, they gave him credit. They gave him, they named the asteroid 1000 after Piazzi. But then the question is, what does it mean? And I almost, as to where it is in my chart, I'm beginning to think it's like the guy who likes to build telescopes. Piazzi. That planet, if you have that planet, now I happen to have it in 1745-46 of Taurus, right opposite my Jupiter in 1745 Scorpio. And then there's the planet Lilith, the black moon Lilith, 1747 Capricorn. So Piazzi being where it is, well, that's one reason I chose to use that planet. Now it's not on this particular chart because they say, well, how are you going to use all 1,000? Now there's 10,000 asteroids. There's probably 100,000 asteroids now. They can't even think of names of them anymore. So how are you going to happen to pick one? Well, let's. And they said, well, you're safest using Ceres, Pallas, Juno, and Vesta, the 4 women. And you know what? In my chart, they don't do anything. Now, Athena finally does. Athena does. So I use her. But this is not true. So somebody on the internet said, look, if it works, if it happens to be, something important in your natal chart, or, and you just happen upon it somehow, go for it. Use it. And so, because it's, and how exactly I came across it, I don't know, but there it was in 17, at the time of my birth. Now it's different. It's now in 3 of Sag. But Piazzia, so it's the feminized version of Piazzi. But Piazzi is the monk. And he was a Catholic. And I suppose as a monk, he probably spent a certain amount of time in prayer. He taught theology at one of the schools. So he was bright. Somewhere studying that particular order of monks, they were not allowed to take alms. They were not allowed to beg. So basically what it amounted to is these particular kind of monks had to be kind of rich when they had to bring their own money when they joined this order. But I don't know more about Piazzi, but he was an intellectual, so somebody had the money to send him to school, and he learned theology, but he also learned math, and he started studying up on astronomy, and that's where he made his mark. Discovered Ceres. So that's. So what does it mean? Well, it's a kind of an astronomer's planet, right? Astronomer's asteroid. That's what he did. And so I look at my chart and it says, well, I spent a lot of my life wishing to build a telescope. I finally did. Got some good pictures of Mars about 20 years ago. Piazzi. Now, I don't know if I'm going to publish this. But anyway, let's go back to make a prediction now. 521. So we're coming up in real time. The new moon is almost here. And I imagine when it comes, we'll hear a crackling in the sky. Maybe there'll be an earthquake or a hurricane or some event. Somebody crashing into a telephone pole. Well, what's in the nature of this new moon? Is it going to be good or evil? So here we look at the chart. Well, it's okay. 10 of Capricorn, conjunct Athena. We talked about that. Zeus's daughter, and she's a warlike. But she's prepared. I think she's probably really into equipment. So if there's a lull in any war right now, it's because they're taking the time to build new equipment. Okay? And that's opposite Kronos. Now it's across the ascendant-descendant for Alliance, Ohio. What you like to say is going to happen to have personal significance for me. Kronos, they're going to maybe say, hey, Bill, why don't you run for mayor again and again? And I'd probably be dumb enough to do it. That's what Kronos. And keeping in mind that there's Neptune on the 10th, it's all illusion. And the people that are smart know, hey, you want a pipe dream to pursue for the next 9 months? Why don't you run for mayor? It's kind of a Republican town, and I presumably would be a Democrat. So I would have 9 months to live that pipe dream. I have been there, done that. Might do it again. According to this, hey, might do it again. That's the opposition. Okay, so then you have the sextile to Saturn. In Pisces. Now, see, the thing in Neptune in Pisces, that's a total dream, right? I mean, that's a dreamy planet on top of an unrealistic sign. So double dreamy. So the Saturn brings a little bit of common sense into what it would otherwise be an orgy of wishful thinking. So a little bit of common sense. Saturn makes a nice trine to the Kronos on the ascendant, and makes a nice sextile. So we have a configuration there of Kronos opposite the new moon with Athena, and then making a sextile and a trine to Saturn in Pisces, which is somewhat sobering up this Neptune illusion. And the fact the new moon's in Capricorn, that's Capricorn's a pretty sober planet. It's ruled by Saturn. So we get kind of a conflict here between pulling back and forth of who? Dreamers and stark realists. And you know, if you want my opinion, the truth is somewhere in between. You know, or the best way to proceed is to have a dream in your heart and common sense in your brain, in your mind, as I suppose. All right, now what else? Here's Mars. In 3 of Leo, squaring that's Lilith. It's the Hades marker, but it's Lilith. In 3 of Scorpio. So Mars in 3 of Leo, well, 2 of Leo, squaring Lilith in 3 of Scorpio. So what's the and then there's Pluto completing the T-square in 0 of Aquarius. So Mars, Pluto, and Lilith is a fast-moving, moves 3 degrees a day. That's actually called Waldemath, but we're using the Hades glyph because that was available in the software, and I stole it from Hades, and I call it. It's got the calculations for Waldemath. So the T-square between Mars and Pluto and Hades. Well, I would say that's ugly violence. Now, we've had these couple wars, you know, I mean, which are of interest to the United States. The Israel war, you know, in Gaza, and the Ukrainian war in the Ukraine against Russia. The United States, those are our favorite wars. There are probably other wars in Africa and all over the place that we don't care that much about. But you know, I read the newspapers here in the United States, so those are the ones that I'm attuned to. And Mars opposite Pluto. Now there's a lot of Martian and destructive energy there. And you can say, well, Pluto could be rebirth, you know. But then you put it in a T-square with Lilith, and Lilith is really bad news, by the way. I mean, you could kind of let your inner wild, and there's some, you know, some New Age astrologers, they like to call it the inner wild. And it is. But the mythology of Lilith, she was Adam's first wife, and they, you know, she wanted to be equal to Adam. Well, they kicked her out of heaven. So, and this is from the Talmud. It's a Jewish scripture. Because the Bible, and it's another Jewish scripture, right, only mentions Eve. They don't talk about Lilith. But the Talmud does mention the first actual wife was, and she was created equal to Adam. And in this patriarchal world of the Bible and the one we live in, they put her in exile. So she goes around killing babies. And, you know, she is actually bad news. She is actually bad news. You know, inner wild or not. She's bad news. And when you have this configuration with Mars and Pluto, which is, well, okay, Pluto's rebirth, but it's also death. It's also explosion. It can be pretty ugly. And put in the T-square with Waldemath, which is the dark Moon Lilith, just a few degrees away, by the way, is the black Moon Lilith. But the dark Moon Lilith is in the Hades glyph. It's represented in this chart in green. And it's right on... well, that would be the 5th house cusp. 2nd to 8th to 5th. Well, my predilection, or what's the word? My proclivity is to call a stock market crash. And I've lost money my whole life predicting and betting on crashes. And I got one right in 1987 and got about 30 others wrong. So, you know, I'm not the man to listen to about crashes. But something ugly is going to happen in an alliance that falls on the 2nd and 8th house, which is your money and other people's money. Now, in New York City, that won't be on the 2nd and 8th. So we go back to, well, what do the planets mean? Death and rebirth, opposite Mars. Mars makes things happen. Mars is action, right? And Waldemath is ugly, depraved, you know, torture, war crimes, stuff like that. So that's what we've got coming. You know, not very pretty. Oh, here, 5:32. Well, we blew right past the actual time. The actual time was 5:27. So I guess I will sign off. You know, this is Bill Kennick, Uranian astrologer, with predictions for new disasters. I'm kind of taking that there was a joke, kind of a joke in that. And Beyond the Fringe, I think it was. English comedy group of, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. New disasters. Mocking some English radio commentator from the Second World War, I think it was. But anyway, here we do have some new disasters. And so what's up for... And this is a monthly chart. In other words, it's not a solstice, it's not an eclipse, but it's just a monthly chart. So, probably won't be the end of the world. But unless, of course, your sun falls on the ascendant, which mine does. So, it's going to be a fun time for me. Let's see. Will I live to the next one? Well, there might be some ugly stuff happening to me personally, but to the world in general, it's just going to be these ugly wars continue. Yeah. So anyway, look on the internet. You probably find somebody in India that's going to do a better job at this than I just did. But I hope you like the story about Piazzi. Okay, bye.